In 63 BCE, under the shadow of Rome's collapsing republic, a child was born who would one day rebuild an entire world. His name was Gaius Octavius, later known as Augustus Caesar, the architect of an empire that would shape Western civilization for centuries. But his story did not begin in palaces, armies, or triumphs. It began in uncertainty, in a Rome stained with political corruption, greed, and bloodshed. Octavius came from a modest but respectable family. His mother, Actium, was the niece of Julius Caesar, the man whose ambition shook the earth beneath Rome's feet. This connection placed Octavius close enough to power to touch it, yet far enough to feel the dangers it carried. From the moment he could understand words, he heard the name Caesar whispered with awe and fear. Unlike other Roman boys raised in privilege and arrogance, Octavius grew up observing silently, absorbing everything around him with a calm, calculating mind. His childhood friends often said he had the eyes of someone who listened more than he spoke, a rare trait in Roman nobility. Even as a boy, he sensed that Rome, swollen by conquests and political rivalry, was heading toward an inevitable transformation. And he intended to be ready when that moment arrived. He devoted himself to study, rhetoric, philosophy, military history, Roman law, and most importantly, the fragile machinery of political power. While others enjoyed feasts and games, Octavius studied maps, learning how Rome's territories were governed, where rebellions ignited, and where generals gained too much influence. He saw cracks in the Republic long before most senators recognized them. Under the guidance of strict tutors and disciplined mentors, he learned restraint, strategy, and the art of reading human character. He could spot loyalty and betrayal with uncanny precision. These were not the lessons of a child. They were the tools of a future statesman. But destiny truly changed course when Julius Caesar adopted him. At just 18, Octavius went from a quiet, noble youth to the formal heir of Rome's most powerful man. The decision sent shockwaves through the Republic. Senators murmured their disbelief. Caesar's rivals mocked the idea that this delicate teenager could inherit Rome. Even Caesar's closest allies doubted that the boy had the strength to lead legions, let alone govern a fractured world. Yet, Octavius remained calm. Inside him burned a resolve that no one else could see. He understood something vital: power was not always seized through brute force. Sometimes it was taken through patience, alliances, and the ability to outthink every enemy in the room. When Caesar fell to the blades of conspirators in 44 BCE, Rome expected Octavius to fade into irrelevance. Instead, he stepped forward with an iron will. This single moment revealed the truth that had been preparing itself quietly for years. The fragile teenager that Rome had underestimated was the only one strong enough to rebuild it. This was the dawn of Augustus Caesar, the transformation of a quiet observer into the most influential emperor the world had ever known. Rome did not realize it yet, but its destiny had already shifted. A new world was rising, and he would shape it with his mind, his patience, and eventually his absolute power. Rome was bleeding. Julius Caesar lay dead, assassinated by men who believed they had saved the Republic from tyranny. But in reality, they had awakened something far more formidable. Into this storm stepped Gaius, Octavius now, Caesar's adopted son, heir to the most dangerous legacy in the world. He was only 18. To many Romans, he appeared fragile, inexperienced, unthreatening. But beneath the quiet exterior was a calculating mind, sharpened by years of observation. He understood Rome's greatest truth. Power belonged not to the strongest soldier, but to the one who understood people. And Octavius understood them better than anyone. He first secured the loyalty of Caesar's veterans, the soldiers who had marched across continents under Caesar's banner. They looked at Octavius and saw not a boy, but the blood of their general. With them, by his side, he gained something priceless: legitimacy. Next came his brilliant political maneuvering. Rome's power structure was fragmented between the Senate, Caesar's supporters, and ambitious generals. Octavius positioned himself carefully, neither too aggressive nor too passive. He aligned with men he secretly despised, made peace with rivals he planned to later destroy, and slowly built a coalition that strengthened his claim. Then came his boldest move, forming the second triumvirate with Mark, Antony, and Lepidus. This alliance was not built on trust, it was built on necessity. Rome was on the verge of collapse, and only by uniting could the three hope to stabilize it. Together, they hunted down Caesar's assassins, unleashing a brutal wave of vengeance across the Republic. The message was clear: Rome may kill Caesar, but Rome would never kill Caesar's legacy. With the conspirators defeated, Octavius turned his sights inward. The triumvirate, once united by purpose, grew poisoned by rivalry. Mark, Antony, the charismatic general, beloved by soldiers, became Octavius's most dangerous opponent. Their ambitions collided like thunder. Their power struggles shook the Republic, and their political war soon turned into something far greater. Antony's alliance with Cleopatra VII of Egypt, queen of the richest kingdom in the Mediterranean, gave him resources and influence that threatened Rome itself. To Octavius, this was treason disguised as romance. To Rome, it was the spark that ignited fear. Octavius seized the moment with masterful propaganda. He declared Antony's loyalty compromised, painting Cleopatra as a foreign seductress trying to seize Rome through Antony's ambition. The Roman people, already wary of foreign powers, rallied behind Octavius. The stage was set for the decisive showdown. The Battle of Actium, 31 BCE. Against Antony and Cleopatra's massive fleet, Octavius commanded a disciplined, strategically positioned navy under Agrippa's genius leadership. The battle was fierce, chaotic, and unforgiving. But by day's end, Antony's forces crumbled. Cleopatra fled. Antony's defeat was inevitable. Rome had chosen its future. In the aftermath, Octavius marched into Egypt not as a conqueror of nations, but as the final heir of Caesar's vision. Antony and Cleopatra's tragic deaths sealed Octavius's victory. No rival remained. No Senate faction could challenge him. No army stood against him. Rome now had one master. And in 27 BCE, the Senate bestowed upon him a new name, Augustus, meaning the revered one. A title not of a king, but of something greater. This was the rise of Augustus Caesar, the moment a quiet youth ascended to become the first emperor of Rome. The Republic, once proud and ancient, was gone. In its place stood an empire vast, disciplined, and destined to reshape the world. But this was only the beginning of the age of absolute rule. When Octavius became Augustus, Rome did not simply gain a ruler, gained an architect of destiny. The Republic had died, but its death gave birth to something stronger, more disciplined, more enduring: the Roman Empire. Under Augustus, Rome entered an age so stable, so prosperous, that historians still call it the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For the first time in centuries, Rome was not tearing itself apart. Civil wars ended. Rival generals were gone. The Senate, once a battleground of egos, now worked within the structure Augustus created. Rome finally had direction, because Augustus controlled every lever of power with silent mastery. Yet, he never declared himself king. He understood Roman psychology too well. Rome hated monarchs. Augustus crafted a new identity: princeps, the first citizen, a title that sounded humble but disguised absolute authority. He held control of the army, the treasury, foreign policy, and the very heartbeat of the state, and he wielded them with precision. His reforms reshaped the empire, the military. Augustus professionalized the Roman legions, transforming them into a disciplined force, loyal to Rome, not individual generals. He established permanent bases, standardized pay, and created the Praetorian Guard, an elite unit charged with protecting the emperor himself. The administration: he organized the empire into provinces with governors accountable directly to him. Corruption, once Rome's greatest disease, faced a ruthless purge. For the first time, conquered lands experienced consistent laws, taxation, and governance. The economy: Augustus rebuilt infrastructure, restored temples, and revived trade routes across Europe, Africa, and Asia. Wealth flowed into the empire, strengthening cities, armies, and culture. He patronized poets, architects, and historians, ushering in a golden age of literature and art. Under his rule, figures like Virgil, Ovid, and Horace flourished, immortalizing Rome's glory in their works. But his greatest masterpiece was the transformation of Rome itself. Once a city of cracked streets and aging temples, Rome became a marble capital. Augustus famously declared, "I found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble." Massive forums, monuments, triumphal arches, and palaces rose across the landscape, illuminated by torchlight and adorned with carvings that celebrated Rome's destiny. The empire's capital became the physical expression of Augustus's rule: orderly, eternal, invincible. Yet power always invites shadows. Augustus knew that his empire could not survive on force alone. He mastered the art of political performance. He appeared modest in public, dressed simply, lived with discipline, and avoided the vulgar display of wealth that had destroyed leaders before him. The people trusted him because he behaved unlike any tyrant they had ever seen. But behind this humility lay a mind that calculated every detail. He monitored the Senate closely. He exiled threats quietly. He kept enemies near and allies closer. Rome was stable because Augustus made it stable. Under his leadership, borders expanded. Northern Spain fell. The Alps were subdued. Egypt became a Roman province. Trade with Arabia and India flourished. Rome was no longer just a state, was the center of the known world. This was the peak of Augustus's power. A ruler who commanded armies without lifting a sword. A sovereign who shaped laws without wearing a crown. A man who claimed to be the first citizen while ruling as history's most effective emperor. The age of absolute rule had begun, and Augustus stood alone at its summit. The architect of a realm destined to endure for centuries. Rome under Augustus became more than a capital. It became the beating heart of an empire, the center of politics, power, art, and ceremony. If Versailles symbolized French absolutism centuries later, then the Imperial Court of Augustus was Rome's own golden era masterpiece, an environment crafted to reflect the emperor's vision of order, majesty, and eternal authority. Augustus understood something profound. Power is not only exercised, it's displayed. And nowhere was this display more masterful than in the world he built within Rome. At the center stood the Palatine Hill, where Augustus constructed his residence, the Domus Augusti, a palace not decadent but deliberate. Unlike later emperors who surrounded themselves with overwhelming luxury, Augustus chose elegance and symbolism. The palace's walls were decorated with fine frescoes, its halls lined with polished marble, its gardens filled with statues of gods and heroes. Every detail whispered one message: Rome is divine, and its ruler is chosen by fate. From the Palatine, Augustus could look out across a transformed city. The Forum of Augustus, with its towering marble columns, stood as a tribute to Roman justice and military might. At its center stood a massive statue of Augustus himself, armored, stern, and triumphant, reminder to every visitor of who shaped Rome's destiny. Inside the Imperial Court, life took on a ritualistic rhythm. Senators, generals, diplomats, and poets moved through the corridors, each navigating the delicate balance of influence and loyalty. The court was both a political theater and a place of artistic brilliance. Poets recited verses celebrating Rome's heritage. Sculptors carved busts of gods and emperors. Historians chronicled victories that would echo through centuries. But beneath the beauty lay a carefully engineered hierarchy. Livia Drusilla, Augustus's wife, reigned over the domestic and social sphere of the court. Her intelligence, calm, authority, and sharp instincts made her one of the most influential women in Roman history. She shaped alliances, advised Augustus quietly, and maintained the dignified tone of the imperial household. The Praetorian Guard, elite soldiers handpicked to protect the emperor, patrolled the grounds. Their presence was subtle, but unmistakably silent reminder that peace existed because Augustus enforced it. Ceremonies filled the calendar, triumphs celebrating military conquests, religious festivals honoring Rome's gods, Senate visits, and diplomatic receptions. Public appearances staged to show the emperor's humility and the empire's strength. Every ritual reinforced a truth Augustus wanted Rome to believe. The empire was stable. Rome's citizens felt the transformation everywhere. Public baths glittered with new mosaics. Fresh aqueducts brought clean water. Temples rose anew from foundations cracked by civil war. Markets overflowed with goods from Africa, India, Arabia, Gaul, and beyond. The city became a living map of Rome's reach. At night, torchlight flickered across marble statues and golden rooftops, illuminating a city reborn. The Imperial Court hosted dinners where military commanders sat beside poets, foreign kings beside senators. Wine flowed, debates roared, and alliances were forged in whispers. But Augustus himself remained measured, almost ascetic. He dined simply, dressed modestly, and avoided extravagance. His true luxury was the vision he crafted not of himself as a king, but as the guardian of Rome's destiny. This humility, whether genuine or strategic, made him untouchable. The glory of his court was therefore not decadence, was order. A precise, harmonious system where every person, every ritual, every marble structure reflected Augustus's central mission to transform Rome from a battlefield of ambition into the capital of a world empire. In this marble heart of power, Augustus achieved what no Roman before him could. He made Rome eternal. The empire trembles. The emperor faces his darkest trials. Rome under Augustus gleamed like polished marble, stretching from the deserts of Egypt to the mist-covered forests of Germania. But every empire, no matter how brilliant, casts long shadows. And the deeper the greatness of Augustus grew, the more dangerous those shadows became. The Pax Romana, Rome's great peace, was not born from gentle diplomacy alone. It was forged in war, discipline, and relentless pressure on every frontier. The world beyond Rome did not sleep, and neither did Augustus. As he entered the middle years of his reign, a series of storms gathered, storms that would test not only his rule, but the very soul of the empire he built. The Germanic frontier, the forest of death, far from Rome's marble columns, lay a land of dark woods and fierce tribes. Germania, a place the Romans never fully understood and never truly controlled. Augustus had entrusted this region to one of his promising generals, Publius Quinctilius Varus, to Augustus. Varus was loyal, a man of experience. But in the unforgiving Germanic wilderness, loyalty would not save him. The Germanic prince, Arminius, trained in Roman warfare, plotted a trap so devastating that it would shatter Roman pride. In the year 09 CE, 3 Roman legions marched into the Teutoburg forest and never returned. When news reached Augustus, he froze. Witnesses said he slammed his head against the wall in agony and cried, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." It was not just a military defeat. It was a psychological blow to an emperor who sought perfection. It was the first true crack in the empire he had crafted. Whispers in the palace's betrayal and succession. Augustus feared this most of all. Who would rule after him? He had rebuilt Rome from ruins, but he knew that an empire survives only if its ruler can be replaced. And here, fate tortured him. One by one, the heirs he carefully groomed were taken by illness intrigue, or untimely death. Marcellus, the bright young nephew Gone. Agrippa, his loyal general, and the empire's architect, Gone. Gaius and Lucius, the adopted sons, groomed for greatness, lost before their time. The palace halls, once filled with hope, became corridors of suspicion and paranoia. Every shadow looked like a conspiracy. Every whisper hinted at ambition. The greatest empire on earth, it seemed, could not protect the people Augustus loved most. In the end, he turned to Tiberius, a man he trusted, but never truly loved. A man forged by discipline, cold efficiency, and silent resentment. Choosing Tiberius was not a triumph. It was a necessity, a reminder that even emperors must bow to fate. The battle within, the emperor grows old. The greatest wars Augustus faced were not fought with swords, but with time. His body weakened. His voice grew softer, but his will remained unbroken. As shadows grew longer around him, rebellions in the provinces, betrayals among allies, unrest in the Senate Custos held the empire together through sheer determination. He had brought Rome out of civil war and into an age of golden peace. But peace, he learned, was a fragile masterpiece, one that required constant vigilance. In these final years of struggle, Augustus realized the true cost of power. To rule an empire is to stand alone in the light, while surrounded by shadows, and in those shadows, the future of Rome quietly waited.
The sun that had risen over Rome with the young Octavian was now setting over an aging Augustus Caesar. His hair had turned silver, his steps had grown slower, but his eyes, those sharp, penetrating eyes, still carried the weight of an empire. He had seen Rome at its worst, rebuilt it into something glorious, and defended it from chaos for more than 4 decades. Now, the man who had once marched through the smoke of civil war walked through the quiet marble halls of his palace, contemplating the end of his extraordinary journey. The final burden of empire age forced Augustus to confront his greatest fear, that everything he built could crumble the moment he was gone. He had reshaped Rome from a fragile republic into a powerful empire, but history had taught him a cruel lesson: civilization does not survive on monuments alone. It survives on leadership. He had chosen Tiberius as his successor, not out of love but necessity. Their relationship was complex, distant, restrained, and bound by duty rather than affection. Augustus trained him, watched him, tested him, yet he knew the truth. No one could ever fully replace the architect of Rome's peace. In his final years, Augustus traveled less, spoke less, and observed more. He devoted himself to securing laws, strengthening borders, and refining the imperial system so it would endure beyond his lifetime. He wanted Rome to stand for 1,000 years, not as a republic of quarrels, but as an empire of order. He once said, "I found Rome a city of brick. I leave her a city of marble, but marble, no matter how strong, still needed a guardian." The emperor's last journey in the summer of 14C, Augustus left Rome for the last time. He traveled south to Nola, the small town where his father had once lived. The emperor who had commanded legions, conquered kingdoms, and reshaped the world now sought peace, perhaps sensing that his time was drawing to a close. His final days were marked by a quiet dignity. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic declarations, just calm reflection. Livia, his steadfast companion and political partner, remained at his side. Together they reviewed the life he had lived, the battles he had fought, and the legacy he hoped to leave behind. On the last morning, weakened but resolute, Augustus gathered his remaining strength and asked the servants if there was applause like an actor concluding a long performance. Then he whispered to Livia, Have I played my part well? And with that, the first emperor of Rome took his final breath. A nation in mourning news of Augustus's death spread across the empire with the force of a lightning strike. In Rome, people wept openly. Soldiers across distant frontiers lowered their standards in mourning. From Spain to Syria, temples echoed with tributes to the man who had given Rome its longest era of peace. His funeral procession was vast. Thousands lined the streets, showering flowers upon the chariot bearing his body. At the mausoleum of Augustus, he was laid to rest with the honors of a king, a god, and the founder of a new world. The legacy that changed the earth, Augustus Caesar's impact, did not end with his death. It only began. He created political structures that shaped Europe for centuries. He reformed taxation, built roads that connected continents, strengthened Rome's armies, and cultivated an era of prosperity unmatched in ancient history. His rule ushered in the Pax Romana to 100 years of relative peace. He was not just a ruler. He was the architect of the Roman Empire, a visionary who understood that power must be organized, stabilized, and disciplined. His leadership became the blueprint for kings, emperors, and nations long after Rome fell. Most rulers are remembered for their victories. A few are remembered for their tragedies. But Augustus Caesar is remembered for something far greater. He built a world that outlived him.